Should we just get started then?
Yeah, might as well.
All right.
You're not being very interesting right now, so.
Your mom goes to college.
Oh, is that a reference?
Yeah, very timely too. It's Napoleon Dynamite. So as you know, this is The Measure of an Episode, where it is our continuing mission to explore what makes Star Trek proper Star Trek and not just a Dragonball Z filler episode. I'm Jonathan.
Oh. And I have never seen Dragon Ball Z.
I knew that was coming. Yep. I'll explain for sure.
And this week, we watched Star Trek Picard, Season 3, Episode 4, No-Win Scenario.
Don't we do this with criteria?
Oh, right. You're right. But I want to do the...
Okay,
yeah, you're right. I'm sorry.
It's fine.
I'm sorry. I thought we were doing an abbreviated episode, so I was going to skip the 15 seconds.
Well, that's fine. Yeah, we have 3 criteria. If you want to know what they are, listen to another episode.
No, I'll give them. I can give them. The criteria by which we judge these episodes. Number 1, is there science fiction, inherent, explored? That's inherent, explored. In the plot. Number 2, is that science fiction unique or novel in some way? And number 3, is there a moral or ethical dilemma in the episode? I'm Paul.
And I'm Jonathan, and you seem very eager, so what's the blurb, Paul?
Oh, I don't have the blurb. I was just pissed off that the title, No-Win Scenario, there's no hyphen, no win.
Yeah.
Which requires a hyphen. And I can't believe this made it past all the writers who are on the show. Maybe they thought that the hyphen was too untitly for the episode. And maybe I'm splitting hairs here. Maybe I'm being too nitpicky. But when the episode starts off with something like this, I feel like, like when you do online dating, men are less like this than women. Women they look for every grammatical error and look at that as a red flag. That you should not go out with this person because they clearly don't know how to spell there and there.
Yeah. I
understand you should do some proofreading, but I think it's still worth the coffee if you like the profile. This is supposed to have been written by the cream of the crop of writers, and it's grammatically incorrect right off the bat.
Right. And
I'm Paul.
And I'm Jonathan. And this week, as Paul
What's
said,
the blurb?
Right. So the blurb writer was already irritated. He's like, you know what? I didn't even watch the episode.
He's like, Worf goes on vacation with Rafi.
Right. That's the no-win scenario. All right, so the blurb says, with time running out, Picard, Riker, and crew must confront the sins of their past and heal fresh wounds, while the Titan, dead in the water, drifts helplessly towards certain destruction within a mysterious space anomaly. I feel
like an alternate title could have been Dead in the Water.
Oh, that would have been a good one.
I mean, I like that no-win scenario. That's kind of like the same. It's the same thing, right? It's the same title, just a different way of saying it. But they say it a couple of times in the show, dead in the water.
Right, but here's the other part of it too. Like, this is not the last episode, and we are dealing with all the main characters. And it's the same thing that I always struggle with when you have this kind of drama and tension. Like, they're going to get out. It's just a question of how. Like, no-win scenario seems far more hopeless, at least to me, than Dead in the Water. And Dead in the Water is like, okay, they're stuck. They have to figure out a way out. And no-win scenario is like, there's nothing you can do.
Right. It was a little glib on their part to call it something like that.
Yeah.
Because we know it's a no-win scenario.
Right.
No hyphen. No.
It's a win scenario. We just don't know what it is yet.
Yeah, exactly.
Speaking to the camera, there was a moment in the holodeck where Shaw should have just turned to the camera when he was talking about that fancy Borg stuff that happened on the Stargazer. Like, you need to forget about that. The real Borg is still out there. And I was like, wow, that's one line to explain why we're not worried about the Borg in Picard in season 2.
Or it felt like they wanted to give this guy, Captain Dick, which, by the way, he called himself a dick, or somebody called him a dick, and I felt vindicated.
Yeah.
I felt totally vindicated. Captain Dick they wanted him to tell this story about having been in a no-win situation and how Picard just keeps getting the shit stick on this stuff because Jack was mad. I guess we find out why maybe Jack was mad at the end of this episode. But Jack
was also a shitty moment for him to do. But
yeah, it didn't make sense in context. But also, like Borg, Picard was kidnapped and assimilated by the Borg. It's not like he's like, I like these Borg. I like what they stand for. I'm going to go join them.
Right.
That's not what happened. And so the idea that he was blaming, Captain Dick was blaming Picard for all that stuff that happened at Wolf 359 didn't make sense. It didn't land. They should have come up with something different. Invent a new scenario that was from whatever, from the show. They have 7 seasons worth, 178 episodes worth of scenarios to pull from. It didn't have to be the big one. Mm-hmm. That kind of, first of all, contradicted itself with what the Borg are supposed to be now. And it was unclear. It's never been answered whether the Borg have been different since the 21st century when season 2 happened. Because supposedly Agnes changed the goals of the Borg or changed the outlook of the Borg in such a way. And so hundreds of years went by. And so did Wolf 359 happen? I mean, I guess it did. Because they wanted this Captain Dick to have the story. But it asked the question, did Agnes change the course of Borg history? And did any of that stuff happen?
That's what I'm saying. Like Shaw specifically said, like everything that happened on the Stargazer, which was the ship at the end of season 2, like that doesn't matter. The real Borg is still out there.
It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make any sense. At least not. We need more information as to why those two timelines are still concurrent. Like, wow, they're happening still.
Right. Like if that's the origin of the Borg now, why is there a bad Borg out there?
Right. Because the Borg supposedly changed at the end of season 2.
Right.
Because of Agnes.
Right.
But I'm with you. I still hope we see Agnes / Borg Queen by the end of this show.
Yeah. So to go back to the beginning, now that I've said that piece, the reason why I'm calling this a Dragon Ball Z filler episode is because on Dragon Ball Z, before they start fighting, they have at least one episode, typically more, where the two opponents are just charging up their power. And they're facing each other. They're building up their power. So they have this glow around them. And the episode is filled with flashbacks to show their training to get here or the reason why they're having that fight. And
is that where Lost got their ideas from?
Right. I mean, quite possibly.
Except when Lost cuts back, there's no fight.
Right.
They're just eating nuts.
Drinking from a
giant
fish hamster water dispenser in a cage.
And then they get into their giant hamster wheel. And they don't even run. They just sit there and it kind of slowly lists back and forth.
Right. As they have a flashback. Yeah.
Nothing interesting happens.
Right.
Even when there's a giant hamster wheel, they don't even do the thing that you're supposed to do in a hamster wheel with on Lost.
But that's what this episode was. Like this episode had, I feel like, so many unnecessary flashbacks.
And unnecessary labeling of flashbacks yet again.
Right.
Yet again, because they were in the middle of it. And the first one I get. I'm fine with it. If you have to do it, do it. It's stupid because we're going to, again, from context, pull, even though they're in the same place. Why they have to, because Picard didn't want to leave. He's like, I'm staying here. You can shoot around me.
All right, well, let's make this the holodeck then.
This is the holodeck action. Everybody rushes over. Like, call to action.
Somebody still has their bib on from makeup.
They kept doing the thing where it's like 5 years earlier. And he's like sitting, it's like the same scenario. It's not like it's a different scenario 5 years ago. It's the same one that you told us at the beginning of the episode was 5 years earlier.
Right. Like we can piece these things together. Yeah.
And they're doing the Lost thing where they're cutting, like they're taking a moment in a tense situation and stopping and going back. And they cut forward again and they tell us current time. Like, who doesn't know that?
Right.
Who's watching this and being like, I feel very disoriented right now.
Wait, what happened to the bar? Wait, is Beverly at the bar?
Where's Guinan? There's a bar. We're on a starship. There must be a bartender, right?
What also this kind of suggests is that Picard kind of not became an alcoholic. That's a little too dark, but definitely started frequenting bars after his time with Guinan. Like,
that's true.
In the hopes that he would see her, or he just started to enjoy the atmosphere and the ambience. Like,
well, he's also got to hawk his wine.
Hawk his wine, right. Not really a wine drinker. Get out.
You should just thrown it.
Right. I mean, it's fake anyway.
It's true. But I have to say that this whole gravity well crisis, I loved it.
Yes.
I loved that it was a problem that they have to solve. And I got everything I kind of wanted from that, which was the problem happened. There's issues around how we're getting out of it. They established that this is a no-win situation, a no-win scenario.
No-win scenario.
Win scenario. Yeah, that was good. That's why punctuation matters, everybody. Yeah. So,
free consultation. No, money down.
Let's eat, Grandma.
What's that in the road? Ahead?
Want to keep going? We keep going. We can do 45 minutes of these.
I've been Jonathan.
What was I saying? Oh, so I liked it. And then we eventually get the conference room thing. We get the conference room, like how are we going to get past this? Where there's no Data, there's no Geordi, which I kind of missed, that they're calm yet neutral, like this is what's happening. I guess we can try and do this. Like they're kind of like, we've never done this before.
Right. It's pressing, but they're not panicked when they have those things.
Right.
Like we've got 30 minutes to figure this out. Does anybody want some tea?
It would have been nice if they'd been that, man, it would sure be nice to have Data right now.
Right.
Data would know what to do. Or Geordi would know what to do.
Yes.
Or LaForge would know what to do.
But
call my name?
I kind of appreciate that they didn't do that, because knowing that he's going to be on the show later, it's like, wow, that's foreshadowing.
Yeah, I've seen pictures of
projecting.
Obviously Brent Spiner in some sort of Data makeup, whether that's Data or somebody else, I don't know.
Right, I don't.
He obviously comes back, but wouldn't it be nice to foreshadow? Perhaps. Gosh, it would be nice if Data was here, and then perhaps he comes back.
Right, maybe. I feel like they do that so often. It was a nice breath of fresh air that they didn't do that.
Yeah, I just was thinking it myself. I was thinking, gosh, it would be nice if Geordi was here to kind of tie it all together for us.
And that's the thing. That's what you have to do. You have to make the audience get there without telling them. Yeah. And that's what they did this time. Like, you were like, man, it would have been so great to have Data. So when he shows up, you're like, oh, cool. And not, gosh, it would be nice. Like, there's an empty chair where Data could totally sit.
What if there was the empty chair where Data would normally sit?
Right,
or where
an empty
LaForge
chair
would.
where Data once sat. Yeah.
There's a sticker that says Data, reserved for Data. That's what they would do on this show. But it would be nice if they all looked at it and didn't say anything. And like maybe Picard just looked at it and was going to say something. He's about to say like LaForge, and she's sitting there, and then he catches himself, and she says, "Yes, sir," and he's like, "Never mind." Right, like she's the helmsman.
Right,
like not that she is stupid, but like that's not what he meant. Like he meant to look for Geordi, and Geordi wasn't there. Like that. Like I want there to be like they wanted us to do this when Picard sits down in the captain's seat, and he's kind of in charge. Right, all of a sudden he's the captain again, and they had this moment where they played the ba 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 da 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 da, and he says engage, and
nothing happened. No.
Well, it kind of does. Like at least the most happened. I feel like it was the most earned, but like they didn't lead up to it. And he was so goddamn smiley, you know? Like at most, Picard was gratified, right? You could tell he was happy with the situation without being so smiley.
Right.
Like it feels un-Picard to me. And I wish that the old Picard was there in the sense that, oh, let's get a glimpse of this old person, right? Or the old character.
Yeah. Well, and this is the moment where this either works or it doesn't. You're either dead or you're not. So I feel like grinning like a schoolboy that you get to be in the captain's chair is not really the outlook that he should be having at that time.
Right. You wanted him to start taking a selfie or something like that. He was so giddy.
Right.
And this is not what Picard would do. You know, I wanted him to be he wasn't in charge. He was just this sort of retired admiral.
Mm-hmm.
And he was trying to take control of the situation when Riker was fighting the Shrike, and he didn't. And he knew, he didn't know what to do. He was grasping at straws to try and win.
Mm-hmm.
I got the sense that he was desperate Picard.
Right.
Not, I know what's going to happen. We've done this before.
Mm-hmm.
Listen to me. I
Mm-hmm.
know what I'm doing. That wasn't the Picard we got. The Picard we got was the desperate one. And then finally, they let him get into the chair and he makes everything right. It's not really what happened. I think it's what they were going for.
Well, and the other part too for me about all this was the fury that Riker had on the bridge did not continue into this episode. That was really disappointing to me. Like, I would have, even if he did calm down, he still has that level of not resentment, but frustration that Picard told him to do this, and without even thinking about like the fact that she had this portal gun that could turn it right back around onto the Titan. And when they're standing in the room and they're talking over each other, I feel like Riker's anger should have bubbled up at that moment, and he should have exploded at Picard to get him to stop talking so he could then go through his story about burying his son.
Tell him he's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I kind of agree with you. I felt like that scene made the most sense dramatically to me, that Riker was defeated because it was to him a no-win scenario.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, we're going to die. There's no sense in me expending energy to yell at you at this point. Just stop talking so I can tell you what's happening. I'm just informing you as a courtesy. And I'm going to tell you that maybe you're right, that I was afraid, but it doesn't matter now. Like,
Right.
I'm just going to give you this advice. So it's like, to me, it was okay. I felt like once again, that Frakes is doing a pretty bang up job.
Oh, yeah.
I really like him the most, aside from Captain Dick, who I still like the most. He's still my hero.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that's what they should be doing, the conversation between Riker and Picard, where they're acknowledging it and giving it weight, but not digging into it, kind of like they're doing with this whole Jack Picard relationship.
Yeah.
Where they had to have several scenes of them interacting with each other because they felt the need to it. It's kind of the same thing of why I don't like it when they kill characters in television shows or in movies, because now they have to do the requisite everybody's sad moment,
Mm-hmm.
right? Unless it's just a silly action show or Breaking Bad where everybody dies, you don't care. But when a main character dies, or a character dies that's close to one of the main characters, now everybody has to be sad. It's the same thing. You dropped a bomb that Jack is the son of Picard, so now we have to acknowledge it, and you have to give it weight because it's a big deal, and so now we have to spend time with them talking to each other. And
Right.
it's kind of dragging the episode down a little bit. And I think that when Jack starts telling the story in the holodeck to Picard, and they kind of like echo it out and they kind of fade away, even though Picard looks super bored already.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh God, a story. I tell stories. And they cut it off, and I guarantee that scene and that story played out, and they're like, this is too long. Like, we're supposed to be careening towards death right here, and this is a 5-minute scene about him doing something. So I'm glad they did that, and I would almost guarantee that story was told in full in one of the cuts of the episode.
Right. And they were like, we got to decide, do we cut the story or do we cut the gawking at the space sperm?
Well, the space sperm took way more money. And so they're like, that's valuable to us, so we're going to keep that in. We're cutting.
Good call.
Yeah.
Right.
Because it looked cool. It actually reminded me of the Abyss, the aliens in the Abyss. They had that
That's fair.
look to them.
Right.
Yeah. It kind of looked like they took jellyfish and painted a smiley face on them.
Oh, I totally missed that.
Yeah, because they had eyes and a mouth.
Right. No.
Yeah.
All I saw were the
You know what a smiley face is?
right. No, all I saw were the tentacles. I didn't actually see the tops of them. I must have looked away or something.
But anyway, I felt like I mean, this was directed by Frakes,
Mm-hmm.
and it kind of shows.
Oh,
it feels
that was
like
the other thing. Sorry.
I hated this episode because of Frakes directed it.
No, well, another part of this episode that really just it didn't take me out of the episode per se, but it, like I noticed it was just how much voiceover there was.
Yeah.
There was a ton, like segueing from one scene to another, or like just discussing, like when he's talking about how important family is within your crew, how it's the flashback scene, but it's it's voiceover on the current like relaxed and celebration and relief that they were able to jumpstart the ship.
Yeah, I wonder if that's a Frakes decision, because there were a couple of different moments where I noticed it when Picard or Frakes was telling Seven to go and explore unofficially, and his dialogue kind of overlaps into her going into the ship and kind of doing what she's going to do. And then Beverly is counting down. She's that seed is starting to happen, and then it starts with 7, 6, 5, 4. I thought that was clever. I liked that type of storytelling / writing. I felt like that gave it momentum, where you're not it's not just scene and the next scene and the next scene. You overlap them.
Yeah,
and it felt very Nolan-esque. Nolan does that a lot, where it's not really a scene. It's like just a moment.
Sure.
And then that kind of fades into the next moment. And I liked it. I felt like, oh, finally we're getting somewhere. We're like, it's moving. And the part, it felt like a solid 44-minute episode that had 15 minutes of talking in it that could have been cut out. Because I don't really care. I mean, do you care more about the relationship between Jack and Picard, or even just Jack, after they've had 2 full episodes of talking to each other and kind of hashing out their differences? I mean, I felt like the scene in the 5 years ago scene in the actual bar, wherever they are, 10 forward, that held more weight for me, and it said more about Jack and more about Picard in that 5 seconds of interaction than their 5-minute conversation. Because to me, if I was Jack, that would be the first thing I would talk about. Hey, I saw you and I asked you. Like, I came to see you to see what would happen. I tested you. It wasn't very nice of me, but I did because I was mad.
Right.
I was mad at you, even though I didn't really deserve to be mad at you. I was still mad at you. And I tested you. I'm sorry. This is what you said. It hurt my feelings. And so, just so you know about it.
Right.
And that would have been the first thing I said.
And that was what was so frustrating for me about that scene, was he was asking him at the most inappropriate time, surrounded by Starfleet, where they are asking him about his time and about how important his career was. You're not going to sit there and be like, well, hey, this coming from a stranger, don't you think that other family is important too? And then like be upset that he chose the answer that was diplomatically more appropriate for his audience.
Right. And he's not going to gush his way into, now that you mention it, I'm kind of sorry that I never started a family, and pretty sad. Like, I'm pretty depressed most of the time about that, but I have a winery and a dog. And so
kind of balances
not
out.
enough.
Right.
I'm also having these dreams about Data all the time, and it's really kind of fucking me up, but thanks for asking, buddy. Drinks are on me. What was he expecting him to say?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, again, it's one of those things, like it's kind of a TV thing where you're just giving that person even more of a reason. And there are people who do that, but they're people, and he's also talked about being an outsider. So, all right, talking it out loud, it does make a little bit of sense that Jack would do that. Like, he's talking about how he's an outsider. He's talking about how he's always kind of tended for himself, and he doesn't know how to interact with people. So it would make sense for him to ask an inappropriate like a fine question, but at an inappropriate time, and then be upset that the answer wasn't what he wanted.
The problem with that, though, is that when Picard has this revelation that was Jack, when he kind of has that moment.
Did he, though? That's what I was wondering.
I mean, that's what the show was telling us. I can't imagine being like...
I don't know if that was intentional. I mean, we'll find out, but... It
just seems like it was to me. I mean, it seems like, because if they wanted it to be Jack remembering that moment and looking at Picard not remembering that moment, they should have not had them looking at each other. They should have had Picard kind of just talking to Will, or like from a distance, Jack is watching Picard, not them gaping at each other.
Yeah. Well, and so that's what throws me off, is like, it was one moment. There's no way. I mean, maybe, but it requires so much suspension of disbelief to get to that in this one moment where he's interrupted and answering these questions about his experiences on Starfleet, and all he wants to do is eat his lunch, and there's one person past the crowd who asks a question, and he like kind of gives a diplomatic answer to the Starfleet crew that he's talking to so he can get back to his lunch, he's going to remember the face of that person and be like, oh my God, that was you 5 years ago?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, they wanted to make it, I guess in a writing sense, it made sense because it tied the whole episode together. It kind of explained a lot of things, but only superficially, because again, like we kind of worked out that it's not a fair question to ask a stranger.
Right.
This idea that, yes, I understand that in the writing sense that you can kind of make it be poignant, but it's not really, because he just wanted to eat his lunch and he didn't want to get into it. It was a way to brush off the question.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
They conscripted Captain Dick to go do something, and he delivered. He came through. They caught the infiltrator, the traitor who infilled, and
he filled in.
He filled in, and Seven made a pun. I had to rewind it and turn on captions to make sure that I heard her correctly, because when she finds the little pot. By the way, I liked when Captain Dick was explaining to Seven how they can kind of find the infiltrator, the shapeshifter, and it goes through this long explanation of how they can use the computer and that he just sits in a bucket to regenerate, et cetera, et cetera. And the one time that he hands her the pad to demonstrate something, it's like, this is what a bucket looks like. Look for one of these. Look for a bucket. Have you seen a bucket before? This is a bucket. Look for this.
Right.
I just thought it was funny. And then she goes and finds the bucket, and she's like, residue. I couldn't believe it. They gave her a pun, which I don't know if I love or if I hate it.
Well, that is what Shaw said to her.
Did he? I thought that she made that up.
No. Yeah, he said, like, go find the residue or residue.
Oh, well, it's less good then.
Right.
He's probably going to die. I have a feeling he's going to die.
Yeah, I mean, he is not a legacy character, nor is he he's not a legacy character in one way or the other. He's not one of the original, and he's not a descendant.
They could totally make a show on the Titan. They keep 7 of 9 on, because she probably, what else is she doing?
Right.
She's not aging out of anything. She can still walk. And the only reason Frakes is on there, like, he's not an actor anymore.
Right.
Like, he's on there as kind of like, oh, I'll go and do this for a while.
Yeah.
He's just a director.
Yeah. I do like that all of these actors are enjoying stepping back into these shoes, and nobody is doing it begrudgingly or they're disappointed that they did this. That is nice.
Seems like a lot of fun
to hear about. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. What else did they do? They did some other stuff. They figured out how to ride the wave out.
Oh yeah, that was so they didn't say, so it's kind of like, but I did like that Riker basically gave that sentence. We are going to jumpstart the ship.
Yeah.
And I didn't get the part where Shaw can answer the door and saw Picard, and Picard's like, I know I'm the last person that you want to see. But he said, like, you're still a dipshit from Chicago and we need an old grease monkey. And like Shaw just kind of smirks at him like, hey, you were paying attention to the things I said,
right.
It was like the rebellious student came, and repeated back to the teacher the things that the teacher had said. And the teacher's like, all right, you're actually a pretty attentive student overall. But that's not what the situation was. So I don't get why Picard repeating Shaw's words back to him made him like let his guard down and be more willing to help Picard. Rather than, I know that I did these things and I'm sorry, but we can't really talk about it right now because we have a ship to save and you're the only person who can do it.
So the way that I interpreted that whole interaction, it's kind of started at the end of the holodeck scene where Shaw was relaying his Wolf 359, and then Picard leaves, and then Shaw turns to the whole holodeck and says, sorry, asshole is never a replacement for charm, or whatever he says. And so that was him kind of saying, I realized that what I said was not nice and not true, or at least unfair. That's what I kind of took that as. At least that's what I'm going to give it. I'm giving it that.
Sure.
And so later, this was sort of the AirSat's apology on both sides. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry that I put you in this situation. I'm sorry that I was kidnapped and tortured by the Borg. So sorry about
That's
that.
on me.
Yeah. And I also think that throwing Shaw's attitude back at him, I think he likes that. I think there's a certain part of like he is surrounded by pomp and circumstance with this whole Starfleet gig, and he likes there to be a little bit of attitude, a little rapport, as it were.
Right.
But anyway, that's how I interpret it. It's like it was it was sort of which I'm fine with. I'm glad there wasn't a hey, sorry,
right,
you know, and that was the end of that. Like I liked that it was it fit into the momentum of the scene where
sure,
we don't have time for bullshit. This is what we need from you to survive. Go do it.
yeah,
right.
Yeah, and I'm fine with that inference. I did not take that away from it, but you know, I hear what you're saying, and I can see that being the case. So you know,
I might be doing some work for it, but I liked it. I liked that was kind of where it ended up, and so I'll give it that.
Right.
You know?
And you're not filling in pieces that aren't there. You're just taking those pieces and you're painting your own picture. And that's fine. It's when we have to do all the heavy lifting and we're like, but what if they did this behind the scenes and that's how we got here?
Right.
Like,
right.
That's where we need the Time Cop show.
Oh, yes, Time Cop. I'm still excited about it because I have a feeling it's going to play a role in Strange New Worlds.
Well, and we do know that there is a time travel episode later on in some capacity where Lower Decks is on the show.
Yeah. Or they travel back. Who's traveling forward and who's traveling back? That's the real question.
Based on the little clips from the trailer, I think that they are in Pike's like quarters. So I'm pretty sure that Lower Decks travels back.
Okay. Well, maybe that's part of it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That'd be nice.
It would be kind of fun though to see Pike animated. You know, like maybe
they might do it.
I know.
You don't know,
yeah.
right? So anyway, back to Picard.
Yep.
Well, I have one little thing. Everybody's worried that they're going to take life support offline to ride the wave, to start pedaling.
Mm-hmm.
And that ship is so big that there would be, even with all the people on it, that there would be so much oxygen in the volume of the inside of that ship that it would be hours before they ran out of oxygen, right?
Right.
It might be cold, and I guess the gravity plating stays on.
Yeah.
I would assume that gravity plating is part of life support, but
I feel like no. I feel like that's a last resort for safety reasons.
Well, sure. It's hard to push buttons when you don't have any gravity.
Right.
Tend to fly off the. They tend to push you.
Right.
But I just kind of had that realization that, you know, like, because they say like planet Earth, if suddenly plants stopped producing oxygen and bacteria and algae, et cetera, stopped producing oxygen, that we'd have like thousands of years of air left. Like that's not the thing that would kill us if suddenly that stopped happening.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, and the other thing too, like I feel like also as a safety precaution, it would be like clear out these decks, you know, since there is so much space on the ship, like clear out these decks. You have like your designated bunkmates or something like that. And they shut the life support off to those areas.
I think that's what they started doing. Now, whether or not they suck all the air out of them and they're kind of just like these empty vacuums, probably not, because that would be tough to do. But especially when you turn them back on and you like open the door and you just get sucked into the room or blown into the room.
Yeah.
Whichever one. But I don't know. I like that kind of stuff. I wish they thought about that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like somebody could just say, actually, sir, we'll probably freeze to death before we suffocate. We have plenty of oxygen. Once it turns, something like that. I love that stuff. I love those kind of little details. I wish they would do more of that stuff.
Yeah, just those little snarky, factual, actually things.
Yeah, it's like, shut up, Wesley.
Right.
You know?
Like, yeah. Thank you, Data. Yeah.
I like it. I miss it. Again, I miss Data. Like, why can't they do that? Why can't they just not, instead of just saying stuff like he made a reference, he said far point, like to find new life, et cetera. Mm-hmm. I just wish they had earned that moment. When Beverly says, when they see the giant space sperm and Beverly says to seek out new life, quoting the opening monologue of the show.
Right, because she knows it apparently.
Yeah. Well, she was there when they recorded it.
Right.
By the way, why didn't they have like every different character doing one? They would just alternate, every character doing the monologue. I would have done that.
Well, and not have Patrick Stewart do it at all, and until the very end, like where it's like to boldly go, oh, even they said that. Like, let's boldly get the hell out of here.
Yeah. But so they have that moment, and it just felt like, why couldn't they? They're obviously into thematics in the show, in the writing, right? The no-win situation. It makes sense. So if they were just trying to find their way, if that was sort of the grander theme, because it felt like there was some sort of culmination happening of themes or of something at the end, because they spent so much time on that ending that it felt like an empty moment, because there was nothing that had led up to it. And if they had just spent some time saying, oh, like, I miss the time in Starfleet where we were accomplishing our mission, that we weren't always running from a big gun. What happened to all of our exploration? Like, there's never that monologue. There's never that by Beverly, or, Beverly could have said, we lost our way. We were running from a big gun more than we were finding new life or executing our mission. That's why I left.
Right. Right.
And that never happens.
Yeah.
She just says it. Yeah, she just says it, and they don't even do I was expecting them to do like one of the old themes, because it was a Star Trek moment. It wasn't like a new moment for the new crew. She says it. Beverly says it. I'm a broken record, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, I do.
So, was this a proper Star Trek episode? I'm trying to think about.
I'm good with the first two. Where's the ethical or moral dilemma?
I guess whether or not to take the leap of faith.
That's true. No. That's 100%. Yeah. Because Riker was completely opposed to it, and it took a lot of convincing. Yeah. I'll take it.
Maybe. Is that an ethical dilemma, or is that just
It kind of was, because he was saying, like, we are going to die and you are setting the clock back shorter, or something like that. So
we should die with dignity, not trying to, drown in our own... Well, that metaphor died quickly.
Kind of like they would.
Right.
So yeah.
So
yeah.
So I think that it probably was, because they did some science fiction-y stuff a little bit, that we never really seen. We haven't seen the wave before. Although there is an episode in Next Gen where they do somebody goes to warp because of a wave of some kind, and it's like a sort of the MacGuffin of the episode in Next Gen. It's a big Geordi episode. Anyway, it's not necessarily novel, but I felt like, especially for this show,
I feel like using the wave to charge the batteries, that's pretty novel.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
that's true. And I like how they caught the old the shapeshifter. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, and you know what? I know that this is an episode like to a larger story, but this episode is actually pretty self-contained.
Yeah.
Only insofar as like the problem from the previous episode is still the same problem. They resolve it in this episode. But there have been so many episodes where there is the problem of the episode and there is a larger looming threat outside of it that they don't get to in this episode. But we know that it is still out there for another episode. And I'm totally fine with counting this as, again, even though it's part of a 10 arc story or a 10 episode arc, as an episode unto itself, and saying that, this episode by itself is proper Star Trek.
I think it's maybe my favorite of the season. So I think they did a good job. Frakes did a good job. Writers did a pretty good job. Yeah. Could have snipped it here and there, but okay. So I guess we decided.
Yeah. Yes. Nice. Good job, Picard.
We'll keep watching now.
But not now. Because the next episode we're watching is... I closed it. Dang it.
It's called Strange New Worlds.
Yeah, it's Strange New Worlds Season 2, Episode 4.
Episode 4.
And the blurb says, returning to a planet that dredges up tragic memories, Captain Pike and his landing party find themselves forgetting everything, including their own identities, as he confronts a ghost from his past. Interesting. And it's called Among the Lotus Eaters.
That sounds like a reference to me.
Right? I guess we'll find out. I've been Jonathan.
We'll find out. And I've been Paul.
Oh, sorry. We'll go the other way.
I've been Jonathan.
And I've been Paul.
And this has been The Measure of an Episode. Odo?
I'm going to stop recording and just leave it at that.
Odo was on the show, by the way.
Yeah. There was that brief flash.
Why do they need a picture of Odo for like the picture of the bucket? Did Odo invent the bucket?
I think it was a more personalized changeling bucket, but yeah. Oh, hold on. But you already knew that.